Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social Podcast. Welcome to our first episode of the preview of the World Championships. We'll be taking a look ahead at the women's race and at the men's under-23 race in today's episode of the Cyclocross Social Podcast. With me here today is the owner of the Cyclocross Social website and Instagram account, Tom.
Hello everyone.
And as usual, Issam is here as well.
Hi everybody.
And our favorite analyst, Twan, is here as well.
Hello.
As I said, we'll be taking a look ahead at two races, the women's elite race and the men's under-23 race. But before we do that, we need to talk about where we are racing. We are racing in Oostend, a parcours that has hosted one race so far, the Belgian Championships in 2017. And the parcours, it's on a horse running track, and the other part of the track is close to the sea, so there's some sand in it. And that's the first thing we'll be talking about, the parcours here. So what do you guys expect of the sand?
Well, I think the sand is going to be a spectacle, really. It's a bit unknown what it's going to provide, but it could be long running. It could be a real technical challenge to ride it all. And yeah, I think it's certainly going to be a race decider.
Yeah, it's going to be a race decider for sure. And, I think since we are starting this season, everybody's talking about that sand in Oostende. So, the sand is probably going to be a crucial factor, how the sand is going to lie there. And it's a nice venue, especially with the bridge. So it's pretty interesting and nice venue for World Championships.
So today, we're recording this on Wednesday, I've already seen some footage of the parcours, and that's been a bit different. I've seen a video of Paul Herreigers, that was yesterday. Then the sand was dry and it was pretty hard to come through. Maybe a bit like we saw here in Kokzijde. But then today I've also seen a video of Sven Nys riding through, and Catablanca Vash was there as well, and the older video of Erwin Vervecke. Then the sand looked like tarmac almost, it was pretty easy to come through. What type of sand do you think we can expect this weekend? And how do you think that type of sand will influence the race?
Well, I think if it's wet sand, it will be compact, and the dry sand is much more difficult to ride and much more like sandy itself. But the forecast is looking like a lot of rain coming in the next few days. And if it's been a really wet race, then certainly it will be harder sand, and that will make it easier for the riders if it's a hard pack. You also need to bear in mind that there's tides, which will come in and out, and that could also really affect how the sand is.
Yeah, I think the worst sand riders should be quite happy with the weather forecast here. I think the most significant part of the sand sections where a difference can actually be made will be the back part, as the start should be quite easy with it being very compact with all this rain.
And of course, what you said about that first part is completely true. One, it's pretty compact, and two, you already have that massive speed coming through from that downhill, from the bridge there, which is pretty tall, I think like 12 meters high. So I think that should definitely not be the deciding factor. I agree with what you said. It should be the back part there, because roughly you could divide it into four pieces: the downhill, then the part along the sea, then back up onto the pier, and then from the pier you go back to the bridge. And I think it will definitely be that part going towards the pier and the part going from the pier back to the bridge that will decide, at least, maybe not the race, but at least it will create gaps.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you also have to look a little bit into the fact that on the Saturday you have the women and the under-23, which are probably going to ruin a little bit the parcours in terms of it's going to make it a little bit harder to race on the sand and to go all the way. And it might be that they will make it harder for the men's on the Sunday. And that will, of course, also have an influence.
Then the last thing about the sand, there's a part along the sea. Tom already mentioned it. The tide plays an important role there. The tide will be high for both the men's and the women's race, and both days for all races. So that could potentially give an interesting situation there, because it's a pretty wide section. Will it be running? Will it be riding? And if it's riding, how hard will it be? I mean, do you ride in the sea or perhaps somewhere else?
Yeah, well, I think it just really depends how high the tide actually is. If it's a really high tide, you could see riders kind of opting to run all the way along the sand, or try and use the barriers to ride much nearer to the shore. And if it's a really high tide, the other riders might try and ride all the way out to near the sea where the sand's a bit wetter, and then it will be a much longer path. but potentially they can ride much quicker. And then we saw today even, I think it was Vervecken, he crossed through the sea onto another bit of sand, which looked really compact, which could offer kind of a third, even more different line. So it's certainly going to be a bit of an unknown, and there's going to be a lot of line choices. It's a really long section, so it's going to make or break the race, I feel.
I personally find that a very nice part of the parkour, that the nature has such a big influence on it, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. The short part about the second part of the parkour, quite a lot of corners there, some small up and down hills, nothing major there. And Twan, what do you think? If it's raining, do you think we could potentially see something like we saw in Dendermonde there?
No, I think you saw it in Belgian Championships a few years ago. It looked quite solid ground. It really didn't look like the type of ground that would take on a lot of water, and that I think that's just something that's very useful when you're trying to host horse track racing. Like throughout the entire year, you can't have something as bad as Dendermonde. It just doesn't work.
Well, enough about the parkour. It's time to dive into the racing. The first race we'll be talking about, the women's elite race. Who wants to go first with their opinion, the top favorite here?
Well, I think that if you're going to look at the women's category, that there was one that was standing out quite a lot, and I think that's Lucinda Brandt. She was outstanding. Of course, winner of the World Cup, and very, very strong in overall. I think that she was the best. I think that Alvarado struggled a little bit in a few moments of this season. But actually her last two races were very strong when she came back from her training camp, and I think that she's also ready for this World Championship. Vorst, of course, a little bit out of shape in my opinion, not really that shape that she had last year. And last but not least, but I think that Betsema, the sand is her thing, and that might actually give her a position to be one of the favorites for this race.
Indeed, I would really agree with you on that. We've got 14 nations in the women's race, but only we've talked about Dutch riders, and I think, though, it's going to be a story about the Dutch personally. They've had a 1-2-3 last year, and yeah, I think it's going to be one of Alvarado, Brand, or Betsema who takes the win, and most likely those three perhaps on the podium.
Yeah, I can only agree with that. I think Brandt, the woman of the season so far, but it might just be one of those years where Alvarado peaks toward the World Championships after some struggles earlier in the season. And Betsema, of course, very strong contender, and she'll be hoping that, it doesn't rain quite as much as is forecasted, because she would like a sand section that is as tough as possible.
So by the looks of it, we all seem to agree that there are three clear favorites here, in the person of Brandt perhaps being the one that stands out. But let's take a look at that then. You say Brandt is the favorite. How does Brandt need to ride this race if she wants to become world champion?
I think she needs to make the race hard, in my opinion. I don't think that she needs to give control of the race to other riders. She just needs to control it, make it hard, but don't blow yourself up. And I think that's probably going to be her strategy as well. She just needs to be in the front at all times. She's the strongest over the season, but she just needs to be careful that she doesn't go in that World Championships too confident and with too much will to win that, because that might break her up.
Well, I can ask the same question for Alvarado, and perhaps Twan could answer that one. If Alvarado wants to become world champion, which he does want to, how should she counter the strategy that Brandt is probably going to use?
I think there will be a few key sections on the parcours, but I think the most important one for Alvarado to use against Brandt is when they go back onto the sand, they go back away from the sea. I think that is the point where you need to put pressure on Brandt, and you just shouldn't let her in front of you, because she can really ride bad sand sections.
And also, do you think that Alvarado would have the advantage if it comes down to a last lap? Because that's what Sporza analyst Michel Wuits has said.
I don't know, because it will. I think it will all depend on that section coming away from the sea, because I think Alvarado needs to drop Brandt, because if we're going down to sprint, I am pretty sure Brandt will take it. So I think Alvarado needs to be gone by then.
I wouldn't be so sure about the sprint because I've seen Alvarado beating Brandt in the sprint. I mean, it's been a long time ago. I think it must have been in Niel. But I think in a sprint it could be very close. But I agree that Alvarado should probably try and open a gap because I think Brandt can be sure she will win the sprint. But on the other hand, I think Alvarado does have the right to have the hope to be able to win the sprint.
Indeed, Alvarado took the win last year with the sprint finish against Worst. So I'm sure she'll be thinking she can do it again. But yeah, on paper I would say Brand is the stronger rider head-to-head coming into the finish. But I wouldn't put it past Alvarado on the big day to also come out stronger.
And then Tom, for you, the same question as I asked Twan, but then for Betsema, what do you think Betsema needs to do if she wants to become world champion?
Well, I think Betsema just needs to ride her own race and really just get going. And if she can kind of get a good start and be up in the front and gap her opponents through the sand, which is clearly her strongest part, then I think that's her best hope of winning. So yeah, really putting the pressure on and nailing the sand sections to have enough of a gap on the other parts to hold the chasers off.
Well, if I were to give my opinion on Betsema, I personally think that it's going to be hard for her to become champion. One, because the last couple of races, since she's ever made that step to that front row of the grid, she starts way too fast for my liking. First lap, she goes all in, but then in the second or third lap, she pays the toll for that. I've seen it a couple of races now. And second of all, even if she does make it in the leaders group towards the last lap, she misses this killer instinct, and I don't know what you guys think about this, but to me it looks that Brandt and Alvarado can give 120% if they are battling each other for the win, and they are only satisfied with the win. If they are second, they are angry, they're pissed. But if you see Betsema, sometimes she ends third or fourth, even fourth, and then she's still happy in her interview when you see Brandt Alvarado being pissed. Brandt Alvarado making these moves on each other to be first in the crucial sections, and Betsema not as much. And I think that, especially as Twan said, that part going from the sea back to the pier, if that's crucial, I see Brandt and Alvarado accelerating and Betsema being in third, potentially riding the best section, but because she's in third, she has nothing.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with that. Betsema, throughout her career so far, really seeming to lack that killer instinct, and the wins she does take, it's just one of those magical days where she's just able to ride away from everyone at the latest by lap 2, and it's just gone. And indeed, if it comes down to a last lap, I just don't see her getting the right positioning at the crucial moment.
Then it's time to talk about some of the outsiders. First one for you, Issam. What do you think that Marianne Vos can do here?
Well, I think that Marianne Vos is definitely, I was thinking that she would actually bring on the fight to the youth that we have at this moment leading the women cyclocross, which she kind of did in some races, but also in some races she was not really up there. However, she was pretty satisfied with her shape, and to be honest, you could also see in several races, especially in Mol, that she was pretty strong. She has been practicing on the sand for quite a while. I definitely think that Vos is definitely a name for the top 5.
Vos herself is targeting a medal. Do you think that that's possible?
Like I said, I mean, we have those 3 in front, and to be honest, I didn't see enough of her to say that she's gonna beat them, or at least one of them. But I definitely think that she will be best of the rest, with a little bit of luck, of course, and if the others are not really as good as they were in this season so far. And we just have to see if Vos really can bring on the fight to those women.
I wouldn't count out Vos entirely for a medal, but it will definitely be hard, like you already said, Issam. I mean, she did perform in Mol, where she came relatively close to Brandt and Betsma, who were at the front until she crashed. But on the other parcourses, it was a bit up and down her performance. So I think it will definitely be hard. But perhaps if it's a really tactical race where the three ladies are looking at each other at the front, she might be able to be in that battle for a while. But I guess she will be fighting more with outsiders like Honsinger and Kamp. What do you think about their chances, Twan?
Honsinger, very good rider on certain types of parcourses. And unfortunately, we don't find one of those for her in Oostende. I think she will have to settle for maybe a lower top 10 place. That will most likely be it.
And Tom, what do you reckon for Honsinger?
Yeah, I think the course really is not suiting her, sadly. She's really shown she's adapted well to the European racing scene this year, but we've just not had enough tests in the sand to really kind of hone those skills in. And in the US, they just don't have these really sandy beach courses. So I don't think we can expect to see her on the podium this weekend.
And then a last name we really have to mention is three-time world champion Sanne Cant. Not her season so far. For what position do you think she should be aiming?
I think she'll certainly be happy if she can get in a top 5. But I think it will be more top 10 really for her. She's obviously won many times world champs. But yeah, this season she's not looked so good. Although recent weeks, form has been improving slightly. But yeah, I don't see her inside the top 5 myself.
Well then, to wrap off some names we haven't really mentioned because I don't count them really to an outsider. I mean, they're perhaps even behind the outsiders. Names like Worst, not her season. Someone like Kastelein, not her season either. Arzoufi, Lechner, not the level this season. Richards, not the type of parcours. Rochette, just shy of the level to be one of the outsiders. Do you guys think any of these names that perhaps could surprise or?
Personally, no. I really think we have the 3 favourites who will most probably be the podium riders. And they have kind of been in a slightly different league this year. When you look at Brand, she's won like over 10 races. And yeah, Alvarado, world champion. She's won many races this year. And yeah, although there's been a mix of riders within the top 5, generally it's always been the same top 3.
Time for the predictions then. Top 3.
Top 3, well, okay. I think I'm going to go 3rd place, Brand. 2nd, Betsema. And Alvarado, again, is going to take the win.
I think Brandt is going to put the crown on what has been a beautiful season and take the world title ahead of Alvarado, and Betsma will come 3rd.
Yeah, I think I will agree with Tom on Alvarado winning the Worlds again. And I think that it will be then Brandt in 2nd and Betsema in 3rd.
I think it will be the win for Brandt, just like Twan said, crown on the season in front of Alvarado after a titanic battle. And the 3rd place then goes to Marianne Vos, who outsprints Betsema.
Can I just ask if you think that this is going to be the last chance for Brandt to win a world championship? Or do you think that she might actually has more chances than only this one?
Oh, that's a good question. I think there will be another chance for her if I see how good she's been this season. I think next year will definitely be another opportunity. But you are right, the time is ticking for her. She's not the youngest anymore. Alvarado will probably only get stronger and stronger. So I think this is maybe the best opportunity for her to grab another world title. Or grab a world title.
I expect her to put in a very good season next year as well, though.
Time to talk about the men's U23 race, where the clear favorite, at least that was until the last couple of weeks, reigning world and European champion U23, Ryan Kamp. But the last couple of weeks, I already mentioned it, he's gotten more and more opposition from people like Niels van der Putten, from people like Pim Ronhaar, from people who aren't at the start like Thibaut Nys. But what do you guys expect? Will this be for Kamp or will he face serious opposition?
I would be very disappointed if it's not going to be for Kamp. If we're talking about dominating a season, and actually, it was a very hard season for most guys that were under 23 in the juniors. But the way Kamp was doing this season was so strong. It is like to be there with all the lead riders and just show yourself sometimes in the top 10. it's really good. He performed very well. He was pretty consistent overall this season. He had some tough races, but overall managed to have a very consistent season. And I think that if there is one guy that deserves a world championship, it should be Kamp.
I think it was definitely the strongest for a very long part this season, but it was only the last couple of weeks that he really got opposition. I think he is still the favorite to become world champion, but I think he should watch out for riders, and I think he should especially watch out for Niels van der Putte.
I don't really agree with that, to be honest. I think it's Pim Ronnaar that maybe should be most worried about. Pim Ronnaar also really challenged him in the European Championships and has really grown during the Christmas period and after. Really shown some impressive rides that maybe should have Ryan Kamp a bit worried.
I mean, Ronnaar didn't really challenge at the European Championships. He was 5th, but I get what you're saying. I think Ronnaar has definitely shown in terms of performance that he's made a big step since that 5th place there. And I agree, he's a strong rider, but Niels van der Putte, he's been out, he's fresh, he looks alive, at least that's what I've seen in Hamme and Overijse. And this guy loves sand. The way he rides through the sand, it's sublime. It's something like Zweek. They really come alive when they hit that sand. So that's why I think that Van der Putte will be a big challenger. But I agree, Ronnaar should definitely not be counted out either.
Yeah, and I think also the British will provide some good challenge as well. It was Thomas Main and Cameron Mason, 2nd and 3rd in the European Championships. Now, Cameron Mason obviously had his crash, broken collarbone, and has only done a couple of races since returning, and hasn't been able to have the results he had before. But I think he could still be an outsider, and certainly Thomas Main and Ben Turner will be looking for podium finishes. And Thomas Main said today he's aiming for the win, in fact. Although the course probably doesn't play exactly to his strengths, he's more of a physical, strong rider, prefers the climbs and the really hard conditions. But it'll be interesting to see how he fares in the sand. Likewise, Ben Turner, he showed he can ride in the sand really well in previous races. And yeah, I think he could be another podium contender for sure.
So judging by what we're saying, we're expecting a pretty open race. Perhaps a name that hasn't been mentioned yet is Timo Kielich. This is his last chance and his best chance probably to become world champion under 23. It's his last year in there. He got the first under 23 last weekend in Hamme. I think this is his chance and he will really be wanting to grab that title as well. But once again, I think it will be really hard for him.
Yeah, I think he's shown on the big stage he can perform. Belgian champion under 23 before as well. But yeah, I think this parcours again probably doesn't suit him best. Although he'll certainly be looking to take the win on home soil.
At championships, there's always surprises, especially in the younger age categories. Some potential riders that could surprise here for a medal. I don't know what you guys think. Rouillet, but he got beaten at the Swiss champion by Dario Lillo. So perhaps they, or someone like Hugo Ainin from France, or Fayo Alberto from Spain.
Yeah, I definitely think for the top 10, it's a huge field, and definitely going to be a lot of riders that are looking forward to go into that championship. I think indeed the French guy Hugo Anani is a very solid guy for top 10 maybe in this field, and especially for the Swiss guys as well with Dario Lillo and. Roulier was a little bit disappointed this season, I have to say. But to be honest, can also be a good shout for the top 10. It's also most of the time all right on the championship. And that always motivates people to be better in their results and to try to get the maximum out of it. So I definitely think that, those guys you named are definitely the outsiders. Must be guys that should be in a top 10 normally. But we have to wait and see what they can do and if they can excel in their performance for perhaps even a top 5 or a podium.
Yeah, maybe throw in a little Mace Hendricks in there as well for a potential good result. Personally, I prefer Dario Lillo over Loris Rouillet already. I don't really feel like Rouillet has made any steps over the past 2 years. And it's always been a bit disappointing at the moments that it really mattered.
Well, I guess we're about to find out if you guys actually think they will end on the podium. Time for the top 3 here as well. Time to predict.
Well, let me then go first, and I just want Kamp to win this championship, so I'm gonna say that Kamp will win it. I think that Ronhaar will make it a 1-2 for the Netherlands, and for third place, let's go for Thomas Main. I think there will be a Brit on the podium as well, so let's go down for Thomas Main.
Yeah, I also think there'll be a Brit on the podium, but I'm going to go with Ben Turner actually in third place. Second, I'm going to go for Toon van der Bosch. And I think Ryan Kamp is also going to take the win.
I'm going to go for Ryan Kamp as the world champion for the second year in a row. Pim Ronhaar to finish second and Niels van der Putten on the final podium spot.
Well, I definitely disagree with all of you. I think that Niels van der Putten is going to grab the world title here in front of Pim Ronhaar and Ryan Kamp. Anyway, then I think we've had it for this first part of the preview. Tomorrow we'll be taking a look ahead at the remainder of the races, which are the Men Elite and the Women's Under-23 race. Tom, Issam and Twan, thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for hosting.
I hope all of you enjoyed this podcast. I hope you all tune in tomorrow as well for another episode. Make sure to check our website cyclocross.social.com/live to see where you can watch the World Championships, leave a rating of this podcast, share it with your cyclocross friends, and then we will see you again tomorrow. Goodbye.